Well, on this day, 10 years ago, President Bush announced to the American people that we're going to war. And since then, there's been several memorable and infamous moments, from the toppling of Saddam's statue to President Bush declaring mission accomplished, to American flags draped over the coffins of dead soldiers. We are going to take a look now at a timeline of a decade in Iraq.
The United Nations Security Council has not lived up to its responsibilities, so we will rise to ours.
Iraq continues to flaunt its hostility toward America and to support terror.
They're nothing but a bunch of cold-blooded killers, and that's the way we're going to treat them.
The gravity of this moment is matched by the gravity of the threat that Iraq's weapons of mass destruction pose to the world.
The Iraqi regime possesses biological and chemical weapons.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass death. My fellow Americans, major combat operations in Iraq have ended. In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed. We've seen jubilant Iraqis holding up ink-stained fingers and celebrating their freedom. These images of liberty have inspired us.
By August 31st, 2010, our combat mission in Iraq will end.
Come on, fire.
As promised, the rest of our troops in Iraq will come home by the end of the year. After nearly 9 years, America's war in Iraq will be over.
We're going home! We won! It's over! America! We brought the books into Iraq!
Who are they? Saudi Arabia, any oil-producing country of the world. They sell their oil to the men who sit behind the computers in New York and London every day, and they're representatives of the World Bank and the IMF, and they're the ones that make the difference between what Saudi Arabia gets a barrel of oil out of the ground. You know how much Saudi Arabia, how much it costs them to get a barrel of oil out of the ground? It costs them $5. Who's making that between that and $70 a barrel? They sell it to the oil bourse. Their representatives sit behind the computers in New York and London. They tell everybody on the face of the earth what they're going to give them for a barrel of oil for that day. OPEC has nothing to do with it. Shell Oil Company has nothing to do with it. You don't have anything to do with it. Price and demand has nothing to do with it. It's controlled by the men who sit behind the computers in New York and London every day. They're representatives of the World Bank and the IMF, and they take the big cut right off the top before the oil company ever gets theirs, and they could forgive the loans of every third world country because you paid for it at the gas pump, and it's an atrocity. And if the world ever wakes up, they're going to overthrow the powers that be, and the people will be we the people again. Now I'll give you the details. During the administration of President Carter, there was a man by the name of Mr. Henry Kissinger. He went to every leading oil-producing country in the world, and he said, "I'd like to cut you a deal." And they said, "What?" He said, "We will send America's oil companies over to produce your fields. We'll make you rich. You'll be the wealthiest people on the face of the earth. You must sign on the dotted line to do two things." You may have heard this. Very few have. I would not had I not been there. You must do two things. Number one, you must denominate all oil sales in American dollars. Since 1960 and the inception of the great oil boom, all oil sales have been done in American dollars. Watch this carefully. You've got to know what to do when you go back to those booths over there in the exhibit room, and you'd better do it today. Number one, you must denominate all oil sales in American dollars. Number two, they said, what's that? We like the first one, solid as a dollar. You remember those days? What's number two? He said, you must take a certain percentage. I wish I knew that percentage. Somehow I missed it back in those days. He said, you must take a certain percentage of everything we buy oil from you with, and you must turn around and invest it in American T-bills and securities. Basically, in a nutshell, the oil-producing countries of the world would buy our national debt, $9 trillion. Watch out. Something has happened. Before I go into what has happened, may I say that two nations wouldn't sign on the dotted line. Who were they? Iraq and Iran. A man appeared with me on a radio talk show the other day. Write his name down. It'll also be on the camera today. His name is Abner Dethridge. He was the man, one of the men sent by the State Department of the United States of America to Saddam Hussein back in February through March of 1990, and said, if you invade Kuwait, the State Department and the United States of America will do nothing about it. It was a setup. It was a trap. Saddam didn't know it. Saddam had to be destroyed because he wouldn't sign on this dotted line. That's the only reason. There are a lot of people in the world that have murdered more people than Saddam Hussein did. I'm not taking up for him. I know he was a wicked man, but I'm telling you the facts. And here he did. What did he do? You remember that Kuwait had been a part of Iraq prior to the last war, and when the world was divided up after the last war by the powers that be, Kuwait was taken away from Iraq, and so the statement, so Saddam said, I want Iraq back. He went and invaded it on August the 1st, 1990, and immediately after that, who came down on him? Why? It was a setup. All President Bush Sr. wanted was an excuse to invade Saddam, to get back at him, because Saddam was not willing to sign on the dotted line in the days of Henry Kissinger. What was the second nation that was not willing to sign on the dotted line? Iran. It's not nuclear. What's happening in Iran has nothing at all to do with nuclear. Iran is years away from producing a nuclear bomb. Why are we using nuclear as an excuse to invade Iran, or to do something about Iran, or put sanctions on Iran? North Korea has the bomb. China has the bomb. On and on and on. Israel. You could go on and on with the countries that have the bomb. Why have we singled out Iran, who doesn't even have one yet? Because Iran would not sign on the dotted line in the days of Mr. Henry Kissinger, and they must be destroyed at any price, even if you Americans have to pay the lives of your sons to go there and do it.